SoutherRailFan is the place for amazing videos of all types of trains. SoutherRailFan, subscribe today.
You're looking at an advanced stage, I guess you could say, of my shelf layout. And down here working on this end, figuring out some track trajectory, I guess you could say, with some curves and stuff I've got there. And I thought, you know, this might be a good series for my SoutherRailFan channel. You know, my train buddies might enjoy following along with my progress on my very first layout. So what I'm going to do is rewind a little bit and start at the beginning. We're going to go over the space I've got, what scale I chose and why, and kind of step by step with building my very first layout. When designing your first layout, there's two things you'll need to consider: scale and radius. Scale refers to the actual size of the equipment you'll be running, and radius deals with the curves. Let's look at this chart. This chart first appeared in Model Railroad Craftsman magazine, so we'll give credit to them. It shows the scale ratio of 25 feet prototype equals 1 foot in the model. And all the way to the left there is 1 in 220 is Z scale. 1 in 160 is N scale. 1 in 187 is HO, is by far the most popular. Probably the rarest is the S scale, 1 in 164. O scale, 1 in 148, and G scale is 1 in 25. And looking at that in the models, you can see on the bottom there that is a G scale 60-foot boxcar with cushion couplers in the box. The next on the top there is an O scale gondola. On top of that is an HO scale boxcar, and on top of that is a N scale boxcar. And by far those are the four most popular. You will see some Z scale and some S scale, but there's, as far as I know, there's no commercially readily available items in Z scale and S scale at your most common, you know, like Hobby Lobby or Hobby Town or something like that. They're not going to stock those kind of things. You have to go to a more specialized train shop or either pick those up at a train show. Now, as you can see, my shelf layout is from the front here to the back is 17 inches. And we've got running about 98 inches or so that we've got constructed so far. So you can see any of those would work out on the layout. The G scale, you'd only probably be able to get 2 tracks in there. The O scale, you could probably get 3, maybe 4 tracks in there. HO, you're getting up to where you can get several tracks and some scenery, buildings, and then of course N scale, you can pretty well start an empire here on what we've got started. So that's a look at scale and how big the equipment's going to be for what room you have. That's the first thing you'll need to consider. And the second thing that you'll need to consider, which I consider the most important part, is radius. Now, radius is what curve is the minimum you'll be able to use with the equipment you want to use. I think just right off hand, I don't know exact numbers, but I think G scale, the minimum radius is 24 inches. O scale is probably 15 inches or so. HO scale there is probably HON and O is probably pretty close as far as the minimum radius. Like I said, O scale is probably 15 inches. HO's probably 14 or 12. And I'd say N scale up there is probably 10 or 12 inches. Now the radius is very important, and that's how tight the curve is that you're going to have the minimum on your layout, and that will limit you on what equipment you'll be able to run. So let's take a few minutes to look at radius. On my shelf layout, I've decided to go with HO scale. So anything that we're talking about from now on about radius, curvature, we're going to be talking on a basis of HO scale. On this corner section of the layout, our main line will eventually run on and run through this wall out into the larger part of the building for the larger layout. But on this shelf switching layout, we've got a pretty tight turn onto this section of the shelf layout. Now this will run on to the right and have several industries to serve out there. We're forced to use an 18-inch radius curve if we were going to use these factory manufactured 9-inch sections. That would give us an 18-inch radius curve to come in there. I think we're going to use flex track and tighten that up, maybe even tighter than 15-inch, because we want this part of the track to come in closer to this edge so we can have a bigger yard. But even at 18 inches, you can see, let me see if I can get over ahead of this. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but you can see how far this car sticks over the curvature of the track, and that's not very realistic as far as a running track. Everything's going to run okay on it. You know, the 4 axles on the box car is going to run fine on that. It's just not very realistic. And if you have super tight curves, you can even get that box car to work on it, but it's going to look, what's the technical term I'm looking for? Goofy. It's going to look goofy having that on there really tight, so you might want to camouflage those super tight curves. But if you had a steam engine, or a 8-door box car, a auto rack, something long, it's really not going to be real good on a super tight curve. Worst case scenario, you'll have a car over here and a car over here pulling, and what's going to happen is it's going to pull this car off the track in the middle there. So it's important to kind of figure out what equipment you want to run and what's the tightest radius curve you can have for that. In this switch and shelf layout, that's the only real tight curve we're going to have. There's going to be one on the other side back down here in that turn that may not be quite as sharp, but everything on out into the building, when we get that part built, will be no problem at all. So let's look real quick at some minimum radiuses for types of equipment. Okay, your radius is broke down into inches, and how they get those inches is half of a circle. For instance, if you're using 18-inch radius curve track, a full circle like we have here would be 36 inches. Now the minimum, what they call minimum on HO would be 15 inches, so our circle would be 30 inches. Can you go smaller than 15 inches? Yes. There's certain places on my shelf layout that we're going to have much tighter than a 15-inch radius. 15-inch radius would be the minimum for running, a complete circle of track, or, most everything, 4 axles or smaller would run okay on a 30-inch circle or 15-inch radius. Now we have one curve on each side of the track. We'll look at it, each side of the layout. We'll look at one of those in just a minute. That's going to be running 18 inches, but we're going to use some flex track to tighten that up a little bit. And these curves will reflect what you can run and what you can't run. On 15-inch radius, anything like a passenger car that has 6-axle trucks, locomotives with 6 axles, they're going to be tight running on there. And not only are you going to have problems with it running, it's not going to look prototypical either. So let's get up on the layout again and look at a laid out 18-inch curve on the shelf layout. You know what? I changed my mind. I was going to put a big list together of the minimum radius for certain things, and you know, the best thing about model railroading is it's up to you. You can do whatever you want to do. My suggestion is to do what I do. I bought 9 sections of this 18-inch radius track to test my curvature and see what I needed to go in this corner and to see what I liked running on it. I think that's the best advice to get. Get you a half a circle of whatever track you think you're going to do, and then set some equipment on it. See what you think. You know, you can run out to a local train shop, pick up a 6-pack, or I think it's a 6-pack. Might be a 10-pack or something of track for the half a curve, and some cheap rolling stock, and see what's going to look best for you. Alrighty, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll get started here filming the next episode, and that is how we done our framing for our shelf layout.